Welcome to a special series where we interview a host of notable people from the G100 Summit in Los Cabos, Mexico, on the moment that changed everything. Here, you'll learn their secrets to success, gain invaluable insights into what shaped their careers, and key takeaways on what it takes to be a leader in their field.
This is absolutely what we need. This is absolutely the future. We have to get on this.
Talk to people who think so beautifully about big, complex challenges.
G100 Los Cabos, Mexico, a special series on the moment that changed everything.
What were you like as a kid?
I think I was a pretty curious kid. I may have been a little bit lazy. I think that's a fair description. I was somebody who was always interested in learning. I think that's one of the reasons I went into teaching. I had an interesting childhood because my father was the warden of a county prison, and my mother was a matron at the prison, a female corrections officer.
So what was your dad like?
He was passionate about his work. He was extremely committed to stopping recidivism in our community of people who just went time and again back to the prison for various things. He was a really strong believer in education. He created education programs at the prison. He created work opportunities at the prison and in the community for prisoners once they got out. So that was a real passion of his, and that definitely impacted me. And so when I was looking at what to go into, I chose teaching.
Right.
So I ended up being a teacher for a while.
And was your dad ever negative about his job?
He was negative about the politics of it. The county commissioners who oversaw the jail, he would, be critical of or wonder what the heck they were thinking when they made certain decisions. He was critical of the way the country kind of thought about punishment versus rehabilitation. He was very, very positive in general about people, which always, as I got older, surprised me about my dad because he had every reason not to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he sees the worst of humanity.
Yes.
Well,
and yet he was pretty positive about people, and if we give him a second chance. But then once somebody showed him that they didn't deserve that benefit of the doubt, he also could be really tough.
And your mom, what was she like?
My mom was really inspirational to me. She never graduated from middle school or junior high school. She dropped out to support her family as a young teenager to take a job as a waitress. And so never got that kind of education. She eventually did go back and pursue her high school equivalent. And then she worked at factories. And then when my dad got the job at the prison, the custom in the town was for the warden's wife to be in charge of the female prisoners. And so she was suddenly thrust into being a corrections officer. So she learned how to do that job and how to treat people fairly, but how to have high expectations for the female inmates. And, that was I look back on that now even with more kind of inspiration than I did, I think, when I was a child. But just to be able to take on that kind of responsibility and figure it out.
Cool. Kind of neat. Brothers and sisters?
None.
So only child.
Yeah, only child.
And where do you live now?
Now I live in Southport, Connecticut, with my wife and two kids, and very, very different kind of community, very different location, obviously. I went from my little town in Pennsylvania to being a teacher on the Texas-Mexican border, and then I went from there to working for the Ministry of Education in Japan for a little bit, and then on to graduate school in New York City at Columbia, where I eventually got a few degrees and taught for about 6 years and stayed in the New York area.
And when did child abuse become something that was important to you? Which I guess to a certain extent might be what was the moment that changed everything?
The moment that changed everything for me was a group of kids in that job in Texas on the U.S.-Mexican border. They were kids who tried hard. They were personable kids. They would stay after and talk with me, and they would come and ask for help and stuff like that, but they just couldn't do the work. They couldn't do it in the way I was asking them to do it. And I was, 21 years old with a college degree and had no idea how to kind of help them learn. And my principal at the time, his name was Humberto Vasquez, and he was a really great educator and a really good man. And he kind of took me under his wing and said, hey, these kids have learning disabilities. These kids have ways of kind of processing information that doesn't always work efficiently and effectively. And that's the first time I had ever heard of that. Those kids were also mostly children of migrant farmers. And so they would be left with relatives as their family moved around the U.S. and Mexico with the crops and things like that. And a lot of them had horrific stories about what happened in those farms and in those areas. And
these kids were willing to share?
And
with
yeah.
With a 21-year-old?
Yeah. I think I was close to their age, right? They were juniors and seniors in high school. I was pretty close to their age. I helped in the community a little. I set up the Jobs Training Partnership Act program there to try to get them internships. And so I feel like they opened up more to me maybe than they would a lot of gringos who come down to the border and teach and stuff like that. So it worked pretty well. But so those were my two, as I was leaving those kids and that community in Texas, those were my choices. Do I do something about that horrific life that they were describing in some ways? And not all of their life was horrific, but that element was, right? Or do I focus on education and figure out how to teach these kids who learn differently? I chose teach the kids who learn differently. So I pursued education. I rose up in the ranks of teacher, administrator, all of that. I worked in philanthropies, in ed tech startups, all trying to figure out how to make the world better for kids who learn differently. And then when I was ready for a change, I kind of went back to the well and said, you know what, there was that other idea of what I might have been.
And when was that?
That was about 3 years ago. So I've been the CEO of this organization, and as it turns out, one of the families who were at one of my school with their wonderful, wonderful girls were instrumental in starting and were still on the board of the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they thought that I had some skills that could be useful to that organization when it hit a rough patch. So they reached out and asked me if I would be interested in talking to them about it. I did. I shared this story with them too, and we decided it was a good match. So here I am now, 3 years later, as the CEO of the International Center.
And was it difficult to find progress with this? In other words, it's only 3 years. You're kind of just starting.
Correct. So G100 was super inspirational for me. This is my second time. I came to the first one right after I was named CEO. I actually had to carry a note sheet to tell me what my own organization did so I could tell others, because I wasn't part of it. But I was here, and I figured out from the brilliant people who were here and these amazing social entrepreneurs and amazing problem solvers and tacklers of enormous challenges that you need to be able to think both small and big at the same time, and not just focus on the day-to-day individual things, but also on the bigger picture. And so I went back to my team and said, okay, guys, listen, here is what we're going to do. We're going to go through everything we've done as an organization, and we're going to try to identify the 3 or 4 things that have potential for exponential impact and exponential scale, and therefore the ability to raise exponentially more money around to support the work. So we developed a few of those ideas over the past 3 years. We've had really great success on those 3 ideas. We now have developed the next 3, and we're about to launch into those ideas for 2023 and beyond.
And what determines success?
What determines success can be one kid or one criminal, right? Can we do something to help that kid or that kid's family? Can we do something to stop that criminal? Or it can be 1 million kids and 1 million criminals. And now we have program initiatives that look at both of those things, and I think that's what makes us really successful. But what defines success for me is when I get up in the morning And when I go to bed at night, in that time between, did I do something that in some way made the world a little bit safer, a little bit better for kids? And if I did, then that was a successful day. And I could do the same thing year to year, but I choose to work a day at a time.
And the 3 years from today, what do you hope for?
3 years from today, I want our work to be in I want our work to be in 196 countries. I don't want it to only be in the 30 that we're really active with right now. And I want our work to cover the big change and the small change. And I want the kinds of partners that me and my organization can help be more effective in their work, and they can help us be more effective in our work. And I want kids to not come fourth in priority for law enforcement and for politics and
Can you explain
things
that?
like that. Yeah. So right now, the priorities, where the funding goes and the time and the resources and the capacity, it goes to anti-money laundering, it goes to anti-terrorism, and it goes to anti-narcotics, and then it goes to kids. So kids are always fourth on the priority list, and there's something wrong about that for me. And I want kids to be more of a priority than where it is right now.
Bob Cunningham, thank you. This is the moment that changed everything as part of a broadcast with Genius 100 in Los Cabos, Mexico. Thanks. I hope to... Can we speak again sometime?
Anytime you want, Lawrence.
Terrific.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bob.
To learn more about how you can support G100 initiatives, visit genius100visions.com.